Good evening. Thank you very much for coming out. I think the reason why that introduction was appropriate, important, was for you guys to get an understanding that I don't have a military career. I don't serve in the army on my day-to-day life. I lead a regular life, have a family, and have a normal job. And on October 7th, that all changed. It all had to come to a stop. And we went to defend our country, our family, and our nation. To get a good understanding of my story, we're going to start from the beginning, from October 7th, Simchat Torah. It was about 8:30 a.m. and I'm brushing my teeth after a very festive night at our local Chabad house. And I hear a siren, an ambulance siren just going, and it won't stop. Suddenly realize this is not an ambulance siren. This is a Tzeva Adom, a missile alert. I wake up my wife and our two daughters, Brana and Sima, and we run down to the bomb shelter. In the bomb shelter, we met another neighbor of ours. She's shaking, extremely nervous. She told us we just missed another missile alert. We were sleeping. It was at 6:30 a.m. For the next 2 hours, we're running up and down from the bomb shelter. We're upstairs trying to get the kids ready, brushing teeth, another missile alert, run back down. Explosion, ground shaking, it's quiet. Then we run back up, change pajamas, get some clothes on, another missile alert. That's where we're going, up and down for 2 hours. At about 10:30, my wife decides that I'll go to Shul and I'll see if there's a bomb shelter nearby so they could all join me. When I got there and there is a bomb shelter, my wife and kids join me in Shul. And the first thing that my wife realizes is that none of the women actually showed up. So her first mission was to go house to house and bring the women to Shul. While this is happening, there's a big debate in Shul whether we should continue as normal, davening, kiddush, hakafot, the regular schedule, or we should have some sort of shortened version because of the new situation. Missiles in Jerusalem is not a normal occurrence. So we knew something big was going on. While this debate is happening, the rabbi gets up and makes a big speech. And he says that we just marked 50 years to the Yom Kippur War. And during that time, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that the only way to win the war is through simcha, through happiness. So we're going to proceed as normal. Okay? The energy in the shul flips instantaneously. We start dancing, singing. Another missile alert, we run to the bomb shelter. Explosion, Iron Dome intercepts. Come back to shul, continue dancing. It felt like we were fighting back. At the time, we didn't know what we're fighting back. During the day, cars pulled up and started pulling people that were getting drafted to their units. It really reminded me of a lot of footage I've seen recently of the Yom Kippur War, where cars are pulling up, pulling soldiers to the front lines. Throughout the day, rumors of kidnappings, bases being overrun, communities being overrun, death toll, crazy death toll, these little rumors were coming in. We didn't know what to believe. It was just a little overwhelming and unheard of. Motzei Shabbat, in Israel, we keep only one day of Chag. So I open up my phone, and the news is way worse than I could imagine. Anything that I thought I understood was going on, I didn't, nothing. It was complete chaos. The death toll was climbing by the minute. The number of kidnappings was rising. Some of my friends at that point were already drafted. and I wasn't. But I was getting my gear together. I went to my mother's house, got my boots, my uniform, brought it to my house, got my to-go bag ready. Over the next couple of days, when I wasn't drafted, I realized I may not get drafted. I was part of an evacuation unit during Tzuk Protective Edge. But since then, for the last couple of years, I haven't had reserve duty. The Army was doing some restructuring, and our unit probably fell through the cracks. For me, it was an extremely difficult place to be in. The country's at war. There's a lot of fear. I was at the park one day, and I was with another father. I was swinging my daughters, and we were discussing how difficult it is to be here at the park with our kids while our friends are getting ready for the fight of their lives. On Thursday night, I was sitting with a friend of mine from yeshiva. He was drafted earlier and had some time at home. And we decided to call another friend from yeshiva, and he was with him in the same unit, just to see how he's holding up. I call him, and during the conversation, I tell him I wasn't drafted yet, so I'm available if your unit's looking for people. About 2 hours later, I'm sitting at home with my wife, and he calls me and he asks me if I was serious. I told him yes, I was serious. I put my phone on speaker, and he says, our unit's looking for a machine gunner. I was trained as a machine gunner. Could you come? I said, sure. He said, before you answer, ask your wife. I look at my wife, and she says, on one condition, make sure you put on tefillin every morning. So the next morning, I was on the way to base down south. The base, my unit was called Tzelim base. It's a massive base down south. When we get there, there's thousands of cars just parked on the highway on the way to base. There were soldiers running everywhere. It was mayhem. People trying to find their unit, find their gear. One of the unique things about the Tzedim base is that they have a demo city of Gaza, where it's these concrete houses, buildings, mosques, little alleys, and that's where you do a lot of your training. So I get to my base, find my unit, get my gear, my gun, and we start training. Training is learning how to go house to house, how to work organically with your unit, how to move from a field to an open to a densely populated area. We did a lot of medical trainings and a lot of trainings of if different people get hit, how does that affect the chain of command? And that was kind of our routine. We would train, and then in the evening, we would have people came to our base and would make barbecues and music and dancing. A lot of communities started flying in, and it was incredible. It was a great way to release that tension. You have to understand we didn't have any timeline. We didn't know when we're going in to Gaza. So every day we were training as if it's happening any moment. So we would go to sleep and we would have our bags prepared, ready to go, taking everything you would think a soldier would take into Gaza, whether food, water, ammunition, some warm clothing. Everyone had some sort of something they would take for some spiritual safety. Whether it was a small tehillim, a lot of guys like to take a coin of tzedakah and put it in their boot. My mother gave me a $1 from the Rebbe, and I put it in my dog tag. And that was our routine: train, party, and get ready for the next day. On October 29th, our officer tells us we got our orders. We're going in. We don't know exactly what date, but we have the maps. So call us in. We get into the tent. We leave our phones outside, and we're sitting around the maps. And he explains us exactly how we're going to get where it's going to be our dropping off point. How we're going to get to the border. Which part of the border we're going to cross. what's going to be our first strip of houses, pretty much what is our first 24 hours going to look like. He tells us we're going to be, our unit is in charge of taking over Bet Hanun. It's a small place in the top of the strip, of the Gaza Strip, small city. Towards the end of the debriefing, another commander walks in and pulls me and another friend from Yeshiva out of the tent. And over there, when we walk out, we see another two guys that were with us in Yeshiva. The four of us were in Yeshiva together and in the same unit. The officer gives me a big hug and walks back in. At that moment, I knew it was over. Earlier that evening, we got a message that a friend of ours that is serving up north in tank, his tank flipped over. They were on a 48-hour mission. There were RPG threats. It was night, and they needed to refuel. So they're on this ridge. The border's on one side. There's a cliff on the other side. They're driving without lights, very fast, and their tank flips. We got a message earlier that he was injured and he needs a lot of prayers. Now we found out he was killed. Yinon was with me in yeshiva. He was a brilliant mind. He finished Shas for the first time when he got to 12th grade. He was a history teacher, just finished a doctorate in history. He was a gentle person. He was a kind person. Beyond that, he was a husband to Noah and a father to a 10-month-old baby, Ziv. So it's Sunday night, and we just got our orders that we're going in. And we find out that our good friend just got killed. We don't really know what to feel. We climb over a little mountain overlooking the desert, and we're sitting there for about 2 hours, mostly in silence. The funeral is set for the next morning in Al Herzl, Mount Herzl. It's a military cemetery. And we get permission to go in. 4 of us drive into Jerusalem. During the funeral, there is another missile alert. 1,000 people, middle of the funeral stops, everyone's on the ground. That's another layer of intensity to the whole story. After the funeral, we went to visit his wife, now widow, because we knew we were not going to be able to be there during Shiva. So all his friends are there in uniform, about to go into Gaza, sitting there. Not many words. Some guys tried to say a couple of stories. And then we drove back to base. On the way to base, we decided that we have to put this behind us. We can't process this now. We can't deal with it. We have a mission ahead of us. So whatever, easier said than done. The next morning, Tuesday morning, our officer tells us that by 12 o'clock, give your phones in. That's code for we're going in, say your last goodbyes, call your wife, call your kids. Today's the day. That was one of the more difficult conversations I've ever had to have. Till that moment, I actually didn't think about death. I didn't think of it as a reality, not to me. I was focused on training, being as best soldier I can, working as a unit. But the events of the last 2 days really brought that to the forefront. The fact that I could die. And it was probably the first time I felt fear. So made that phone call, gave my phone in, and got our gear together. And we climbed onto the buses on the way to Kibbutz Erez. That was our dropping off point. On the way to the kibbutz, we get new orders that we've been postponed for 24 hours. So turn back around, back to base. Call my wife, say, babe, it was canceled. And that cycle happens for the next 3 days. Call, say goodbye, get on the bus, just for it to be canceled. On Shabbat afternoon, when we get to Erez, they tell us it's happening tonight. We're not going back to base. So we position outside in the fields of the kibbutz. And we're supposed to cross at 12 a.m. That's our crossing time. At about 10 p.m., our battalion commander tells us that they just found a tunnel at our crossing point, and we're not going in until after they blow it up. The engineers are going to blow it up. There's going to be an explosion. After the explosion, we're going to go in. We're split up into groups of 3, third guarding, 2/3 trying to catch some sleep. You never know when's the next time you're going to get some sleep. And that's how our night goes, some sort of roster. Guarding, sleeping till about 4 a.m. where we're told that we're going in 20 minutes. Get our gear together, load our guns, and our company commander gathers us, gives us words of encouragement. We say Tfilat HaDerech, and we split up into smaller groups, squads, about 25 guys. And our squad leader speaks to us about the privilege we have to fight for the Jewish people, for our family, for our nation. And one of the guys wanted to sing the Baal Shem Tov's nigun at that point. So we sang the nigun, 5 of us knew it. The rest kind of hummed along. Then we started our march. When we reached the border, early morning, one of the guys announces out loud, "Don't forget to cross with your right foot." At that point, we're going to do everything for just a bit of good luck. So we arrive in Bet Hanun. The place is mostly abandoned. The civilians already moved down south. Our general fighting tactic, or the way we fought, was there was some sort of combination of air and artillery strikes. Then we had some tanks with us, and we had these big, massive, bulletproof tractors, and their job was to uncover the ground to make sure there's no mines. They'd occasionally make holes in walls of the houses, so we don't have to go. So we could go into the house from the wall, not have to go into the door, just in case it's booby trapped. So our first night, this D9 creates a shelter for us in the mud. It's freezing cold. And it was, I think, the first time I actually felt the strength of the Israeli army. We're there's a tank next to us, firing at targets. It's the first time I felt the heat of the projectile, the ground shaking under me. Bullets are flying everywhere. And I felt it. When you're training, you don't feel that. They tell you you're going to have a tank over here, artillery over here. The Air Force is going to come and strike. It's very hard to feel that. That night was the first time I felt that it was reassuring that we're not going in alone. First morning in Gaza, Hummers pull up with our first supply. That was one of our big concerns, whether the supply lines will be able to be open. So this Hummer pulls up and unpacks water, ammunition, food. My friend, my partner, gets his bag of food and starts eating it. Look at him and I tell him, "What are you doing?" "I'm eating breakfast." Well, this is supposed to be for 24 hours. That was our first lesson in Gaza. We had to learn quickly was rationing. Our mission in Gaza kind of we have to go house to house and clean up the houses from any ammunition, any tunnels, any tariffs we found. The amount of ammunition was crazy. Whether it was RPGs, grenades, anti-tank bombs, mines, AK-47, tunnels. You have to remember, these are not military bases. These are people's homes. There was one instance that we found an RPG under a child's bed. As a father, that was shocking. And that was kind of our routine. We would go house to house and clear it out. Any explosives we found, whether if it was guns we sent back to Israel, RPGs we would send back. Just the explosives, we would connect C4 to it and blow it up in a controlled explosion. Anything that we thought would be interesting to the intelligent units, like USBs, cell phones, computers, documents, we would send it to them. During our movement in Bet Hanun, we were always on the search for a house. We needed a place to stay. We were staying in houses. So the house that we were looking for, we were always on the search. We needed a house that was standing. We needed a house that could hold 25 soldiers, ideally on the second floor, so we could have a better lookout. Had some hanging out area, a little bit of a kitchen. And then when we would find this house, we would have to get it ready. We would cover we would figure out first where the rest of the units are. And then where are we vulnerable, where our threats are coming from. And then build posts with sandbags and camouflage netting. And the rest of the windows we would cover with blankets, so no one could see our movements. There was no electricity or water in Gaza, so by 5 p.m., the house is pitch black, midnight. And that was kind of our routine. We would attack during the day and hang out at night. About 2 weeks in, we koshered some pots, and then we made some soups and pita. And that was great. It switched up our diet, but it was also fantastic for morale. And we would just play a lot of sheshbesh, making food, and gardening 24/7. Shabbat in Gaza was like any other day in Gaza. Besides Friday night. Friday night was, we tried to get everyone together and make kiddush. It was a beautiful time. For me personally, it was one of the hardest times. I tried to leave my family at the border and pick them up on the way back. Shabbat, Friday night, it was extremely difficult to do. Our reality was crazy. Give you a story. There's this one house we were in, and they started shooting at us. We all dropped down to the floor, and a friend of mine spots an orange on the bench. So he asked the commander, while the bullets are flying over our head, if he could pass him the orange. He was hungry. And my commander lost his mind. But that was the reality we were in, where that was normal. Later on, we found out that it was friendly fire. And thank God no one got hurt in that incident. But that's what we were working with. Before Hanukkah, a friend of mine, he had a grenade launcher. He decided he's making a menorah out of the grenade shells. So after every attack, he would collect the shells and then Hanukkah created beautiful big menorah, Hanukkah. It was a beautiful moment of light in a lot of darkness. I put together a clip of footage from Gaza, so you would be able to see that Hanukkah. In Gaza, there are big miracles, and there's a lot of invisible miracles. An invisible miracle is any house you go into and it doesn't blow up. It's an invisible miracle. We had a couple of big miracles that happened to us. I'll share with you one of them. It was Thursday afternoon, just before the ceasefire. Ceasefire was supposed to start Friday morning, 7 a.m. And we were at the south part of Bet Hanun. Our battalion commander decided that we have to go further north for our safety, because a lot of people are expected to come to their houses to find stuff. And for a soldier, the ceasefire is an extremely dangerous time. You're very vulnerable. So he wanted us to go further north where we could kind of build a stronghold and protect ourselves. We move about 1.5 kilometers north. And one of my friends from a nearby squad is on a balcony in our new houses. And he sees someone running in the distance, a couple houses from us. Calls it in, our company gets together, splits up into 3. One goes up, third goes up to the left, third goes up the right, and the third up the middle. Slowly start closing on shooting, moving forward, shooting. From that middle of that rebel, crazy amount of fire opens up on us. Grenades, AK-47 shooting, like about an hour of an intense firefight. And then it all stops. And we realized what a crazy miracle just happened. There were 6 terrorists waiting for us over there with RPGs, anti-tank sticky bombs. There are these bombs that they connect to tanks with magnets. AK-47s, crazy amount of ammunition. And they were waiting for us to get settled in on our new location. And when you're settled, you're a little less sharp, and you're very vulnerable. And thank God, pure hashgacha pratit, divine providence, luck, call it what you want. We all got out of that unharmed. The 5th night of Hanukkah, we get orders that we've accomplished our mission, and we're going back home. After 40 days in Gaza, 3.5 weeks before that of training, we're going back home. I haven't been at home for Shabbat for 9 weeks before that. And I'm gonna see my family. We cross the border. Next morning, we load up on trucks. We cross the border. It was amazing. The feelings of joy and pride, pure physical exhaustion. There's some very generous people that made a breakfast for us over there, and there's a lot of dancing. My brother and brother-in-law came to visit me at the border, which is, for me, it was beautiful. And that night, I was able to light the Hanukkah candles with my daughters and my wife. So for me, it was beautiful. I'm going to end off with one thought that I had. On October 7th, the Jewish people were hit with probably the worst thing that ever happened since, 1973, the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism is rising. And it's a terrible time. But from that time, there's the most beautiful thing happened. The amount of unity that we've seen. I've seen it from communities around. I've seen it in my unit. The love that we got from around the world. Whether it was people sending us letters, beef jerky, socks, whatever it was. It was beautiful. Just knowing that the Jewish people are behind you, giving you power and supporting you. It gave us energy to keep on fighting. So thank you. I'm gonna show you guys now a short clip from footage that we took with GoPros and cameras that we had with us. It might seem like a movie. It's not. That was our reality. After that, we started a charitable fund for my friend's kid. Whoever wants to participate, you'll have the opportunity. Thank you.